The night was silent. The human colony on the edge of alien space was asleep under the dim blue lights of the security lamps. The air was cool, carrying the soft hum of distant generators. For a moment, it felt like peace, but peace never lasted long on the border worlds. Inside the command post, Commander Ilara stood by the window. Her eyes scanned the darkness beyond the perimeter fence. She felt something in the air, a heaviness like the calm before a storm. She had lived long enough near alien space to know what that feeling meant. Behind her stood Lieutenant Arik, a young soldier with sharp eyes and steady hands. He had been posted here only 6 months ago. He did not have the deep scars of veterans, but he carried the same fire. He believed in loyalty, he believed in duty, and above all, he believed in protecting his people. Suddenly, the alarm siren cut the silence. The red lights blinked inside the post, painting the walls with flashes. Of danger, Ilara pressed a button on her console, her voice calm but urgent. "All units, prepare for contact," she ordered. She turned to Arik, her eyes firm. "You must leave now," she said, her voice sharp. "They are coming, and they will kill anyone who stays." Arik did not move. He looked at her, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the strap. "Of his rifle, Commander," he said softly. "I will not leave you." Ilara shook her head, her hair falling loose across her face. "This is not your fight, not tonight. Your orders are to survive, understand?" Outside, the ground began to tremble. At first it was faint, like distant thunder, but soon the sound grew heavier, like the footsteps of giants. The walls of the command post vibrated, dust falling from the ceiling. Both of them knew what. It meant the aliens were here. Ilara raised her voice, sharper than before. "Lieutenant, this is a direct order, go." Her hand pointed toward the back exit. Her voice carried the authority of years of command. But still, Arik stood frozen in place. He was not afraid. No. His heart pounded not with fear, but with something stronger, a promise he had once made, to never abandon his own. The first explosion shook the colony. The night sky outside burst into fire. A supply tower crumbled, flames rising high. The sound of alien war machines filled the air, metal groans, screeches, and the crackle of energy weapons. The colony was falling apart in minutes. Inside the post, Ilara grabbed her weapon. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with fire. She looked at Arik again. "Young man, do you understand what is out there? They don't take prisoners, they don't show mercy. Leave before it's too late." Arik's voice was quiet but steady. "Then I will die here with you, Commander. But I will not run." Ilara's chest tightened, not from fear, but from the strange weight of his words. He was young, foolish maybe, but there was courage in his defiance. It reminded her of soldiers she had lost before, men and women who stood their ground when death was certain. She wanted to scream at him, force him out the door, but a part of her knew it was already too late. His mind was set. The glass window cracked as another blast shook the ground. Through the shards, Arik saw shadows moving. Massive alien walkers, their glowing red eyes scanning the colony. Behind them, smaller machines crawled, fast and deadly. The sound of human weapons fired in the distance. Screams followed. The colony was now a battlefield. Ilara touched her communicator. "All civilians, to the shelters, all soldiers, hold your ground." Her voice trembled for only a second, then turned hard again. She turned back to Arik, her lips pressed tight. "If you stay, you risk everything," she whispered. Arik simply nodded, his eyes locked on the growing fire outside. "Then everything will be the price," he replied. The tension between them was heavy. The command post was shaking, alarms blaring, the smell of smoke already leaking inside. But in that chaos, a strange silence formed between them. Ilara knew he was not just disobeying, he was making a choice. And choices like that carried weight. The kind of weight history remembered. Another explosion tore through the colony. The walls rattled and one side of the post collapsed in sparks and flame. Ilara staggered, nearly falling, but Arik caught her by the arm. Their eyes met, hers filled with conflict, his with unshaken resolve. She could no longer speak. The words "leave now" felt empty, powerless. Because he had already chosen. His path outside the alien shadows grew larger. The colony lights flickered and died. The red glow of enemy machines painted the night. The war had arrived at their doorstep. And inside, two humans stood in the ruins of a fragile outpost. One demanding retreat, the other refusing. One bound by duty, the other by loyalty. The warning had been given. But the choice was already made. The storm was here, and he stayed. The first strike fell like thunder. A shockwave ripped through the colony walls, tearing metal and stone as if they were made of paper. The sky turned red with fire glowing brighter than the colony lamps. Screams echoed from the streets as families ran toward the shelters. The sound of children crying mixed with the roar of alien war machines. The night of silence was gone, replaced by chaos. Lieutenant Arik stood at the broken window of the command post. Through the rising smoke, he saw them clearly now. Towering machines with sharp metal limbs, their glowing red eyes scanning every corner. Behind them marched smaller alien drones, walking in perfect formation. Each step shook the ground. Each movement carried a deadly purpose. They were not here to warn. They were here to destroy. Commander Alara raised her weapon, her face pale in the flickering lights. She barked orders into her communicator. All units, hold your lines. Protect the civilians, delay them as long as you can. Her voice carried strength, but inside she felt the weight of doom pressing closer. This was not a skirmish, this was an invasion. And she knew their small outpost was not built to withstand such a storm. Arik turned to her, his rifle ready. "We can't hold them off forever," he said, his voice steady but low. Ilara's eyes narrowed. "That's why you should have left when you had the chance." But Arik did not answer. He simply took position by the shattered wall. His silence spoke louder than words. He had chosen, and now he would fight. The ground shook again as the first alien walker fired. A beam of red energy shot across the colony, tearing a row of houses apart. The explosion sent flames into the sky. The sound was deafening, a roar that drowned out everything else. Debris fell like rain. Sparks lit the air, and the cries of survivors grew louder. The colony was being ripped apart piece by piece. Arik fired his rifle, the sharp crack of human steel against alien metal. One of the smaller drones stumbled, sparks bursting from its chest. But for every one that fell, 3 more appeared, their glowing eyes turning toward the command post. They had seen him, they had seen her, and now they were coming. Alara's communicator crackled with voices. "Commander, we're surrounded. We need support," one soldier cried. Another voice screamed before the line went silent. She clenched her jaw, fury burning in her chest. Her people were dying. Her home was burning. She wanted to command, to protect, but she knew the truth. This was a battle they could not win. The command post doors shook as enemy fire struck them. Metal groaned, sparks flew, the walls began to split. Ilara turned to Arik, her voice sharp. "They'll breach soon, we have to move." But Arik shook his head. "If we run now, they'll cut down the civilians trying to reach the shelters." His words were steady, his eyes locked on the doors. He was not just protecting her. He was protecting everyone he could. The doors burst open with a scream of metal. Flames and smoke poured inside. 3 drones crawled through, their limbs sharp like blades, their glowing red eyes locked on the humans. Ilara fired first, her shots precise. 1 drone fell in sparks, but the others moved faster. Arik stepped forward, firing in short bursts. His shots tore into the machines, breaking one apart. The last lunged, but he swung the butt of his rifle, smashing it down. The drone fell, twitching, before going dark. For a moment, silence returned. Only the sound of fire crackling and distant screams filled the air. Ilara breathed hard, sweat dripping down her face. She glanced at Arik, his chest rising and falling. "You should not have stayed," she whispered. Arik looked at her, his voice calm. "If I had left, you would be dead already." Before she could reply, the ground shook again, harder this time. The command post roof cracked, pieces of stone fell. Through the smoke, a shadow rose, One of the alien walkers stepped into view. Its glowing eyes scanned the ruins, its body towering over the building. The sound of its engine was like a monster's growl. Ilara's heart sank. That thing could destroy the entire post in a single strike. The walker raised its arm, energy building at the tip, a glow brighter than fire, humming with deadly power. Ilara shouted, "Down!" As the blast fired, the beam ripped through the wall, tearing it open. The explosion threw Arik to the ground, dust and flame filling the air. His ears rang, his vision blurred, but through the haze, he heard Ilara's voice shouting, "Get up, soldier, they're not done yet." Arik pushed himself up, his rifle still clutched tight. Through the broken wall, he could see the colony burning. Families ran through the chaos, chased by drones. Soldiers fought desperately, their weapons glowing in the dark. But the aliens kept advancing, endless and merciless. This was no ordinary attack. This was extermination. Arik turned to Ilara, his voice harsh. "If we fall back now, maybe we can lead survivors to the shelters." She nodded, her face grim, but inside she knew the truth. The aliens would not let them escape so easily. The attack had begun, and it would not end until the colony was ash. The night had turned into fire, and the war was just beginning. The Mnoya command post was half ruined. Flames licked the walls, smoke crawled through the cracks. Outside, the colony burned as alien machines marched forward, step by step. The night was filled with the sound of explosions and human screams. It was a battlefield now, a place where survival had become a question with no clear answer. Lieutenant Arik wiped blood from his brow. His ears still rang from the last blast, but his hands were steady. He looked at Commander Ilara, who stood, tall despite the chaos. Her face was marked with soot. Her hair wild from the fire, yet her eyes burned with determination. She was the leader here, and he was sworn to follow her. But the choice he was about to make was his own. Another explosion shook the ground. The alien walker outside fired again, destroying another row of shelters. Families scattered, children crying as they ran through the smoke. The soldiers fought hard, but every moment pushed them closer to defeat. The air itself seemed heavy with despair. Ilara grabbed Arik's shoulder, her voice sharp but filled with urgency. "We cannot stay here, soldier. The post is lost. We must fall back to the shelters." Her command was clear. But Arik's eyes narrowed and his jaw tightened. He looked through the broken wall at the burning colony, at the people running hunted by drones, at the soldiers giving their lives in desperate last stands. Something inside him refused to move. "Commander," he said quietly, but with iron in his voice, "if we leave now, they will die out there. The civilians, the wounded, the ones too slow to run." Ilara's lips pressed into a hard line. She wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She had seen it before, aliens cutting down those who lagged behind. There was no mercy in their kind, but still she could not risk losing him too. "You are one man," she said, her voice low but sharp. "You cannot fight an army alone. We must regroup or we lose everything." Arik's grip tightened on his rifle. His heart pounded, not with fear but with resolve. He thought of the promise he had made to himself when he joined the service. Humans never abandon each other, not while breath still remains. The decision was heavy, but the weight of it felt right. Through the smoke, 3 more drones appeared. They crawled over the rubble, their glowing red eyes locked on the command post. Arik raised his rifle without hesitation. His shots rang out, sparks flying as one drone fell. The other 2 rushed forward. Metal limbs striking the ground like blades, Ilara fired beside him, her aim deadly. Together, they cut them down, the machines falling in heaps of burning steel. Ilara lowered her weapon, her breath heavy. She looked at him, her voice softer now. "You should have left when I told you to. You're risking more than your life." Arik's eyes met hers, steady and unbroken. "I made my choice, Commander. My life is nothing if I abandon them." The words struck her deeper than enemy fire. For a moment, her stern commander's heart felt the weight of his loyalty. It was foolish, reckless, but it was also human. And sometimes humanity itself was their strongest weapon. Outside, the walker shifted, its massive form turning toward the shelters. Its energy cannon began to glow. Alara's breath caught. If that blast struck, dozens of families would be wiped out in a single moment. Her hands trembled slightly. She wanted to order retreat, to save what little they had left. But Arik was already moving, his boots striking the cracked floor, his weapon raised. There was no hesitation in him, only resolve. "Arik," she shouted. But he didn't stop. He fired at the walker, not to destroy it, but to draw its attention. The giant machine turned, its glowing eyes now fixed on him. The cannon shifted, its hum rising like the growl of a beast ready to strike. He stood tall, defiant, knowing full well the power of the enemy. But if his fire made the machine turn away from the shelters, then it was worth it. The beam fired. The explosion shook the ground like an earthquake. Arik was thrown back, crashing into the rubble, his armor scorched and smoking. Alara ran to him, her heart pounding. She dragged him behind cover, her hands shaking as she checked for life. His chest rose slowly, his breath ragged, but he was alive. His eyes opened, weak but steady. "I told you," he whispered, voice rough. "I won't run." Alara's throat tightened. For years she had commanded soldiers, ordered them into battles, watched them die. But never had she seen one refuse to abandon her so stubbornly. It frightened her, but it also gave her strength. Perhaps this was what it meant to be human. To stand against the impossible simply because it was right. The alien walker turned again, searching for its next target. Alara looked at Arik, battered but unbroken. Then she looked at the civilians, still fleeing through the smoke. Her decision came hard, but it came clear. She would not order him to retreat again. She would fight with him even if it meant dying here. She raised her weapon, her voice strong once more. "Then we stand together, soldier, until the last breath." Arik smiled faintly through the pain. That's all I needed to hear. The decision had been made, not just his, but hers as well. And with it, the colony gained 2 defenders who refused to run. The fire of war burned brighter, but so did the fire of defiance in their hearts. The ground shook again. Flames rose higher, swallowing the sky in red and black. The alien walker moved through the ruins like a beast of war, its heavy steps crushing homes, its glowing eyes scanning for prey. The colony screamed as people ran, stumbled and fell. Every shadow carried danger. Every breath carried fear. Inside the shattered command post, Arik pulled himself up. Pain shot through his ribs, his armor cracked and burned. Yet he forced his legs to move. Commander Alara was still standing, firing into the night with perfect precision. Her face streaked with ash, her eyes unblinking. She fought like someone who had no intention of surviving, only of protecting. Then the blast came. A bolt of alien energy struck the building beside them. The wall collapsed, stone and steel raining down. Alara cried out as debris crashed against her shoulder. She fell, her weapon sliding from her grasp. Blood ran down her arm, her face twisted in pain. "Commander," Arik shouted. He rushed to her side, ignoring the ache in his own body. Dust choked the air, sparks burned against his skin. She tried to push herself up, but her body betrayed her. Her voice was tight, filled with anger at her own weakness. "Leave me, soldier, go while you still can." But Arik shook his head, his voice sharp. "You gave me that order before, and I refused. I will refuse it again." He crouched, sliding his arms under her, lifting her against his chest. "Guys." Weight pressed into his ribs, but he did not care. Her breath was shallow, her strength fading, but her eyes still burned with fire as she looked up at him. "You are a fool," she whispered. "Then I am your fool," he answered, and carried her. The world around them was falling apart. Flames cut through the streets, shadows of drones, crawling across the ruins. Their red eyes blinked like hunters in the dark. Arik moved fast, every step heavy but steady. He kept his rifle slung, his arms tight around her. He would not drop her, not even if the sky itself collapsed. They reached the street. The night was chaos. Families running, soldiers firing, drones chasing. The air was thick with smoke, the ground littered with bodies. Arik's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He had one mission now, one purpose: carry her to safety no matter the cost. Behind them, the walker roared. Its cannon lit the night. Another beam tearing through buildings, the blast through dirt, and flame across the road knocking Arik to his knees. Alara coughed, blood on her lips. "You'll die if you keep this up," she said, her voice weak. Arik forced himself to his feet. "Then I'll die carrying you, not leaving you." A drone dropped from the roof ahead, its claws glinting in the firelight. Arik twisted, shielding Alara with his body. He swung his rifle up one-handed, firing burst after burst. The drone sparked, stumbled, and fell at his feet. Smoke rose from its chest, its red eye dimming to black. Arik spat dust from his mouth and kept moving. His legs burned, his arms ached, but he refused to stop. Every corner brought more danger. More drones, more fire, more screams. But with each step, the shelters grew closer. The sound of human voices shouting directions, calling survivors inside. Hope flickered faintly in the smoke. Alara's head rested against his shoulder, her breath uneven. Her eyes opened just enough to see his face. "You should have run when you had the chance," she whispered again. Arik gave her a faint smile, though his face was streaked with dirt and blood. "I told you, Commander, I stay." Another blast rocked the street. A building collapsed behind them, sending waves of fire forward. The heat seared his back, but he kept moving. He stumbled, nearly falling, but tightened his grip. She gasped as pain shot through her body. "Arik," she whispered, "you'll burn. Then we'll burn together," he replied, pushing forward. At last, the shelter's entrance came into view. A heavy steel door, guarded by 2 soldiers firing at the drones. They shouted when they saw him, waving him forward. Arik's legs felt like stone, but he forced himself faster. Each step was like climbing a mountain with the weight of the world on his shoulders. But finally he reached the door. The soldiers pulled it open, light spilling out from inside. One of them reached for Alara, but Arik shook his head, refusing to let go. He carried her through the doorway himself. Only when he placed her gently on the ground inside did he allow himself to breathe. His chest heaved, his hands shook, but his eyes were steady. Alara looked up at him, her voice a whisper. "You stayed, even when I ordered you to leave." Arik nodded, his answer simple. "I will always stay." Outside, the war still raged. The colony burned, the machines advanced. But inside the shelter, for one brief moment, there was safety. And that safety had been bought with his choice. The choice to carry her, not abandon her. The choice to stay, even when death demanded otherwise. The rescue was not the end. It was only the beginning. But it proved one truth the aliens could never understand. Humans did not run from each other, not tonight, not ever. The steel doors of the shelter closed behind them with a heavy thud. But the sound of war outside did not fade. The walls shook as distant blasts struck the colony. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Lights flickered. There was no true safety, only a pause. Arik leaned against the wall, his chest rising and falling, sweat mixed with ash on his face. He glanced at Alara, who sat on the floor, leaning against a crate. Her arm was bandaged quickly by one of the medics. Her breathing was shallow, her body weak, but her eyes, even in pain, still burned with command. "You carried me here," she whispered. Arik nodded. "I told you I won't leave." Before she could reply, the shelter trembled again. The sound of metal scraping echoed down the tunnels. Soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. Their weapons raised. The aliens were not stopping, they were hunting. A sharp explosion shook the entrance. The steel door bent inward, screeching like wounded metal. The commander of the guard shouted, "They're breaching, everyone move deeper into the tunnels." Panic spread. Civilians cried out, clutching their children. The line of survivors pushed forward, stumbling into the narrow passages. But Arik's eyes locked on Alara. She tried to stand, but her legs betrayed her. Her body swayed, and she nearly fell. Without hesitation, Arik lifted her again. Her protest was weak. "You cannot keep doing this." But he only answered, "I can, and I will." He adjusted his grip, holding her close. Then he followed the line of survivors into the dark. The tunnels were narrow, carved into stone beneath the colony. Dim lights flickered overhead, throwing long shadows. The air was thick, the sound of footsteps echoing endlessly. Behind them, the door tore apart with a final scream of metal. The aliens had broken through. The chase began. Red lights filled the tunnel as drones crawled inside. Their claws scraped against stone, sparks flying. Their glowing eyes cut through the dark. The screams of civilians grew louder as they ran. Soldiers turned, firing burst after burst. The tunnels flashed with muzzle fire. But the drones kept coming, unstoppable, relentless. Arik pushed forward, carrying Alara through the chaos. His breath came heavy, but his grip never loosened. He ducked under beams of fire as walls shattered around him. Ilara's voice was faint, but steady. "They'll overrun us if we keep running straight." Arik looked ahead. The tunnel split in two paths. He turned left without hesitation, leading a smaller group away. The new passage was darker, filled with dust. The civilians stumbled, their cries echoing louder. Behind them, the sound of claws grew nearer. The drones were fast, too fast. Arik knew they would catch up. He set Ilara down against the wall, his voice firm. "Stay here, I'll hold them." Her hand grabbed his wrist, weak but desperate. "You cannot fight them all." He met her gaze, his eyes steady. "Maybe not. But I can slow them down." He pulled his rifle tight, stepping into the shadows of the tunnel. His boots echoed like the beat of a drum, steady, unbroken. The drones appeared, crawling through the smoke, their red eyes glowing brighter in the darkness. Arik fired, his shots sharp and controlled. One fell, sparks flying, another staggered, but more came, crawling over the bodies of their fallen. The tunnel filled with the smell of burning metal and stone. Arik kept shooting, each burst buying seconds for the others to move further into safety. But one drone slipped past. It rushed toward Ilara and the civilians behind her. Arik turned, firing in panic. His shots hit, but too late. The drone lunged, its claw raised. Ilara struggled to lift a pistol, her hand trembling. The shot rang out, striking the machine's eye. It fell, collapsing at her feet. Sparks dancing, Arik rushed back, his face hard. "You're supposed to rest," he said. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "I don't follow orders well either." The ground shook again. A deep rumble. Rolling through the tunnels, the walker above had moved closer, its weight pressing into the earth. Cracks formed in the ceiling, dust raining down. Arik looked up, his gut twisting. If the tunnels collapsed, they would all be buried alive. "Move," he shouted to the civilians. He lifted Ilara again, pushing forward with everything he had left. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper into the earth. Every step echoed with urgency, every breath felt stolen. Behind them, the sound of drones never stopped. Relentless claws, relentless eyes, relentless death. At last they reached a wide chamber. The soldiers shouted for the civilians to gather. There was another exit deeper inside, leading to the old transport shafts. But as the group moved, the drones poured into the chamber. There, red eyes filled the dark like stars of blood. Arik set Ilara down behind cover, his rifle raised once more. She tried to protest, but he silenced her with a look. "This is what I do," he said. Then he stepped forward into the fire. His shots echoed like thunder, each one striking with purpose. He moved with fury, with resolve, with the decision already made in his heart. The chase had not ended. It had only grown sharper, deadlier, and yet in the chaos, one truth remained. He would carry her. He would fight for her. And he would never let the aliens claim her life. The hunt continued, but so did his defiance. The chamber shook with every blast above. Dust rained down from the ceiling, covering the wounded and the frightened. The soldiers tried to form a line, but the drones kept pouring through the tunnels. Their red eyes glowed brighter, their claws slicing through stone. It was no longer a retreat. It was a trap. Lieutenant Arik tightened his grip on his rifle. His arms ached, his body bruised, but his spirit burned stronger. He looked at Commander Ilara, resting against the wall, her face pale yet unbroken. She had fought until her strength was gone, but even now her eyes commanded. She did not need to speak. He already knew what had to be done. Arik stepped forward. Standing in the center of the chamber, the glow of firelight from the tunnels framed his figure. He raised his rifle, steady and firm. The civilians gasped, the soldiers stared. It was clear to everyone what he intended. He was not planning to run anymore, he was planning to stand. The first wave of drones rushed in. Metal claws scraped against stone, their shrieks echoing. Arik fired sharp bursts that lit the chamber in flashes of fire. One by one, machines fell, sparks exploding from their broken frames, but more came, crawling over the wreckage. There, glowing eyes fixed on him. It was as if the entire alien swarm had chosen him as their target. Arik, Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. You cannot hold them forever. He glanced back at her for only a second, his eyes calm, his voice steady. I don't need forever. I just need enough. The chamber filled with thunder, soldiers added. Their fire, their weapons joining his. But they knew it too. This fight was not survival. It was sacrifice. Arik stood at the front. Refusing to yield ground, every shot was a vow, every step was defiance. The drones lunged, their claws striking. Arik shifted, his rifle now a weapon of steel and fire. He smashed one down with the stock, kicked another back into the shadows. The ground became a storm of sparks and blood, but still he fought. His breath ragged, his body heavy, yet his will unshaken. The civilians watched in silence. Mothers clutched their children, soldiers clenched their rifles. They saw a man refusing to abandon them. They saw a man choosing to stand when running. It was easier. It lit something inside them, a reminder that humanity was more than fear. It was loyalty. It was courage. It was the choice to fight when all hope was gone. Then the ground shook harder. The tunnel widened with a sound like tearing earth. And through the smoke, a new shadow appeared, the alien leader. Massive and towering, its frame covered in dark armor. Its eyes burned brighter than the rest, glowing with cruel intelligence. It stepped forward, each movement like the steps of a monster born for war. The chamber fell silent for a heartbeat. Even the civilians stopped breathing. Ilara's eyes widened as she saw it. Her voice broke through the silence. Arik, fall back, that thing will kill you. But Arik did not move. He raised his rifle, his voice steady. Then it will kill me standing. The leader raised its weapon, a blade of light sparking to life. The air hissed as it cut through the smoke. The drones pulled back, leaving the chamber for their master. This was not a fight of numbers anymore. It was a duel. Arik's chest rose with heavy breaths. He knew he could not win, but he also knew what his stand meant. If he could hold this creature here even for a moment, the others could escape. He thought of Ilara, her voice, her fire, her defiance, and he smiled faintly. It was enough. The alien charged, its blade striking down. Arik rolled aside, firing. A burst into its chest, sparks flew. But the armor held. The blade swung again, grazing his shoulder, burning through the metal. Pain shot through him, but he stayed on his feet. He fired again, this time at its eyes. The creature roared, stumbling back for a second. The chamber shook with its fury. Ilara shouted his name, her voice breaking. But Arik only glanced back. Once his eyes met hers, and without words he told her what she already knew. This was his stand, his choice, his final defiance. The alien charged again. Their clash echoed like thunder in the stone chamber. Every strike, every shot, every cry carried the weight of survival. Arik fought with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. The soldiers rallied, dragging civilians deeper into the tunnels. Ilara's eyes filled with fire and tears as she watched. Her voice trembled, whispering words meant only for him. You stayed, even when death came, you stayed. The chamber blazed with sparks, fire, and blood. The stand was not over yet, but everyone knew the truth. Arik was not fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for them, for her, and no alien could ever take that away. The chamber echoed with the clash of steel and fire. The alien leader swung its burning blade, each strike splitting stone. Arik dodged, stumbled, fired back with bursts of light. Every shot rang with fury, every step screamed of defiance. But his strength was fading, his body breaking. Still, he stood. Ilara watched from behind the line of soldiers. Her heart pounded harder than the blasts shaking the earth. She wanted to rise, to fight at his side, but her body betrayed her, too weak to stand. All she could do was watch as the soldier who refused her orders carried the burden of them all. The alien leader roared, its strike slicing across Arik's chest, his armor cracked, sparks flying. He staggered but did not fall. Blood filled his mouth, his vision blurred, but he tightened his grip on the rifle. He raised it again, a soldier to the last breath. Behind him, civilians screamed as more drones poured into the chamber. The soldiers fought desperately, holding the line. But everyone knew their survival depended on Arik's stand. If the leader broke through, there would be no escape. Arik's rifle clicked empty. He tossed it aside and drew his combat blade. The weapon looked small compared to the alien's glowing sword, but he gritted his teeth and lunged. The clash rang out like thunder, sparks flying as steel met energy. The alien roared and pushed him back. Stone cracked beneath his boots, but still, he refused to fall. "Arik!" Ilara shouted, her voice breaking. He glanced at her just for a moment. His face was pale, his body broken, but his eyes still burned. And in them, she saw no regret, only resolve. The alien struck again, the blade slashing across his side. Pain tore through him, blood spilling across the ground. He gasped but tightened his grip. With one last roar, he drove his blade upward. Steel cut through alien armor, piercing deep. The creature howled, its red eyes flaring. It swung wildly, striking. Him again. Arik was thrown back, crashing against the stone, his body broken. The alien staggered, wounded but not dead. It raised its blade for the final strike. But before it could finish, soldiers fired in unison. Dozens of shots filled the chamber. The leader screamed, sparks bursting from its body. At last, it collapsed, crashing to the ground. The chamber shook with its fall. Silence following. Everyone froze, breathing heavy, staring at the fallen monster. Then their eyes turned to Arik. He lay on the ground, his armor shattered, his body covered in blood. Ilara crawled forward, forcing her broken body to move. She reached him, her trembling hands pressing against his chest. "Stay with me, soldier. Stay," she whispered. His eyes opened slowly, weak but steady. "I told you, I would not leave." Tears burned her eyes, though she fought to keep her voice steady. "You fool, you should have left, you should have saved yourself." Arik's lips curved into their faintest smile. "Then you would be gone and I would live with shame in this way. At least I kept my word." His breath was shallow, fading. The civilians gathered in silence, the soldiers lowered their weapons. Every face was marked by grief and awe. They had witnessed the price of loyalty, the cost of staying when leaving. Was easy. Ilara gripped his hand tight, her voice breaking. "You carried me when I could not walk. You fought when all hope was lost, and now you gave everything." His voice was faint, barely a whisper. Promise me they'll live, that you'll live." She nodded, tears finally falling. "I promise, Arik, I promise." His eyes closed, his chest rising one last time, then silence. The chamber shook again, but not from enemy fire, from the hearts of humans who had seen sacrifice, and sacrifice was stronger than fear. Ilara rose slowly, supported by two soldiers. Her body trembled, her soul burning. She looked at the civilians, the frightened children, the wounded, and she raised her voice, firm and commanding. "You saw what he did. You saw the price he paid. We live because he stood when no one else would. We live because he stayed." Her words carried through the chamber. Every soldier lifted their weapon, their voices rising. Every civilian lifted their head, strength returning through tears. The colony might burn, but humanity's fire burned brighter. They moved deeper into the tunnels, guided by Ilara. The drones outside searched, but the survivors pressed on, each step heavy with loss but stronger for it, because the memory of Arik walked with them. He had not left. He had not run. He had carried her, fought for her, died for her, and his stand would echo forever. Not just in their hearts, but in the galaxy itself. The aliens had won a battle, but they had awakened something greater. The spirit of humanity, the kind that never abandons its own. That was the price of staying, and it was worth everything.